The next Cave Arc Codex is here. Let's bring you up to speed on Paddy MacNamara, Element Spirit, Zodiac Taurus, April 29th, Blood Type O, Age 15. Before I get too deep in, I just want to address the change. A few weeks ago, I asked you, the viewers, to vote on whether we should keep calling this bingo books, or if I should transition to calling them codex entries. Overwhelmingly, according to comments and the reaction to those comments, the community voted for codex. So from here forth, these types of videos where I detail out important aspects about the character's life through a historical context will have the name shifted. Thank you for those who have participated in the vote. If you want to be part of a live, active community helping us build our channel and even little things like this, your input can have a direct effect on our system. So make sure you get engaged, subscribe, comments, even just a quick thumbs up. If you're watching us on a mobile device, you can even give us some hype. Hype is a relatively new addition to the YouTube algorithm sacrificial altar, but there's this whole leadership board that helps smaller channels like ours get discovered. So do all the things while I get into this. Paddy and Tam's marriage was, in part, an economical arrangement between the MacNamara and Smith households. This is important. Remember, when we discussed the difference between courtly love and romantic love so long ago. But for anyone looking for a refresher, the difference between courtly love and romantic love often comes down to the emotional attachment. Courting was done primarily between richer households in the medieval period, which is why Madeline was right to call it out to Imel and Shane during Catching Kiss, Monomyth Episode 2. Tam has a genuine loving attraction and attachment to Paddy, even if he doesn't fully understand him. Paddy has a genuine, caring, and affectionate attachment to Tam, even if he's less passionate about their relationship. But for instance, how Patrick, Olivia, Eowyn, and Fiona see their union is one of economic convenience. Something that is good for the village. Alden is still quite small and new in its inception. Remember, Blair was the first child ever born in a village named Alden, and she's only 16 years old. Oh, and speaking of which, where is poor Blair in all this mess? Woefully left to the wayside. I just hate how it seems to be going for her, but I don't want to get too sidetracked on that while talking about Paddy. If he'd just been more upfront about his plans with Tam and not shouted at her like that, well, hell, maybe things would be different. Arranged marriages were practiced all the time in medieval period by nobility, wealthy landowners, and people of note in order to gain political advantage, merge estates, pass down titles, and so on. While medieval law did allow single women, let's say, to own land and inherit property, of course, the hope of growing the village with new couples and marriages and offspring is the ultimate goal at this point in Alden's future. Too few young people and the village is doomed. Too few newcomers, the economy doesn't prosper. Tam and Paddy's marriage and the Rose's arrival are two huge boons on the village in more ways than one. And from Paddy's point of view, it would keep Paddy and Blair safe from any persecution or misunderstanding. Even if we allow ourselves to believe that Alden wouldn't necessarily have a large portion of population that would be homophobic or transphobic against them, it doesn't necessarily mean that the world at large, in all its deeply misogynistic stupor, wouldn't be the same. So to an extent, Paddy sees Tam as a protector in more ways than one. It allows him to live freely as himself, and it was supposed to include Blair, but damn did he fumble that hard in perfect love and perfect trust. Monomyth Episode 5. So let's just stay away from that for now. Paddy, upon reaching this point in his life, is comfortable within the forge, making all kinds of things. Horseshoes, nails, wheels, and even daggers and weapons. The ability to craft swords, especially, was a highly prized skill, which is why Paddy is seen here using a highly specialized forge. This isn't just your average crafting forge. This is a smelter, used to fuse iron with carbon, through the use of charcoal, into sturdy steel. Steel was, by far, harder to work with than iron, but stronger, able to be resilient, but yet flexible. It was less likely to break, could hold a finer edge, and retain its shape even through repeated stress. but the act of smelting itself was a skill that required lots of practice. In order to craft iron into steel, especially in the Middle Ages, was a surprisingly complex task. Of course, there was no exact way to know or measure the exact minutiae of carbon content per iron ratio that seemed to transform iron into steel. It was almost an act of alchemy in itself. Remember, I've said repeatedly that especially skilled smiths were sometimes accused of witchcraft, and Paddy is one of those such smiths. He has, at a surprisingly young age, figured out a reliable way to smelt down iron into steel, allowing him to craft wonderful metalwork for the village. Now, the process looks like this. First, getting a hold of wrought iron. Wrought is a word that means worked, as in the metal has already been heated and pounded once before. However, wrought iron is also low in carbon with a mixture of less than 0.8%. This means that, as raw iron is used, it must be carburized. Carburization is to heat iron inside a bed of glowing charcoal like the one we see in the background here, so that it absorbs carbon into its outer layer. The fibrous makeup of wrought iron makes it easier to absorb because the rough outside texture soaks in carbon like a sponge. The final step is to quench the metal quickly in water or oil to lock the carbon structure into place and harden the steel. There's no universal truth for which is better, oil or water in this instance. It all comes down to how the steel is being used. Water quenching is best for low alloy steels. Water cools the metal rapidly to lock in the maximum hardness. However, it also carries with it high risks of cracking, warping, or shattering the metal due to violent temperature drop, especially if the steel has a high carbon content. Oil quenching, on the other hand, is better for high carbon steel. It allows for cooling at a moderate and controlled pace. It's not good for low carbon steel because the slow cooling process may not harden it enough to be effective. It can produce smoke, catch fire, or even produce toxic fumes if overheated. Most knives and tools require warm oil rather than water. Once the smith, in this case Paddy, has his steel, the real work begins. Forging a blade is different than just hammering out a sheet or lump of metal. He has to shape a mixture of metals of different known qualities. Some are softer for the core or the sides, and some are harder for the edge and the point. This is the process known as sandwiching. Harder steels are molded around softer steel so that the blade can flex under a sudden impact but resist deformation. Hammers and tongs, like the one Paddy is using, were essential tools at this point, moving the proto-blade between the anvil and the hot coal of the furnace. The fire is fueled by bellows while Paddy monitors the color of the heat being applied. You all know this, of course. Different temperatures glow at different colors on the light spectrum. Red is a cooler color, while orange, yellow, white, and even blue denote a much stronger temperature. For this craft, it was important to keep the metal red hot and hammer it out repeatedly. Hammer, reheat, until it was the length, width, and thickness he wanted. Then he would shape the sides, edges, and tang into shape in order to be both strong and light for striking powerful cuts or thrusting against hard or soft targets. Different blades would require not just different lengths or widths, but also different cross sections. A swordsmith had to master the skill in order to create these shapes. This is a painstakingly meticulous process that required a careful eye and knowledge of how, when, and where to strike. Paddy seems almost able to speak with the metal as they work, and it should be expected from a spirit element behind the forge.
Well, he is a spirit. It makes sense that he would understand the things that mankind does that progresses you forward. He'd understand it better.
Spirit, in Tales of Atonement cosmology, isn't just ghosts and souls in the afterlife. It's also about human ingenuity and intellectual advancement. Paddy doesn't just work with the metal, he learns it. Steel has become his friend and ally rather than just a tool or material. Every chunk of it is treated like someone he's getting to know fresh from the start, and the hammer strikes are the communication of language that he seems to understand better than anybody in Alden, even his father Patrick. Pounding out the metal into a sufficient shape was only a step in the process. There was still way more to do even at this point. See, an okay sword or blade just isn't good enough, especially not for someone like Paddy. He has to have the exact right mixture of good steel and also good temper. Tempering is a low temperature reheating of a hardened but still brittle steel. Paddy calls this relaxing the metal, almost like giving it a spa day. Scientifically, this works by baking the blade over low temperature over an extended period of time. It makes the blade somewhat softer overall and essentially rearranges the molecules of the metal into a softer yet tougher pattern. This isn't to say Paddy understands anything about molecules or chemistry at this stage in history, but he does understand that heating a blade carefully over time makes the blade better. And of course, with no truly accurate way of being able to keep track of temperature or even accurately record time, this means that the art of tempering a blade is entirely based on Paddy's own instinct of his craft. Not only were no two blades truly alike, but knowing exactly how heat treatment could potentially ruin a fantastic blade or save an inferior one was none too easy applied skill in and of itself. But finally, and this is just for crafting the blade, it would be cooled down before it could be polished. This is where the edge and point would be properly honed by hand to a desired degree for the type of work the blade is meant to perform, whether as a tool or a weapon or both. With the blade finished, Paddy would then take the piece to be finished by the village cutler. And what sort of dagger is it that Paddy is making here? It's a bollock dagger. These type of knives were extremely popular from the 13th century all the way up to the 18th century all across Northern Europe. Victorian writers would often refer to them by a more polite name, kidney daggers, but their design isn't meant to be based on kidneys. They're based on exactly what you think they are. Worn prominently at the front of the belt, the hilt is deliberately shaped with two oval swellings to resemble, shall we say, male anatomy. In essence, for someone like Paddy, this is the medieval equivalent to a Packard for modern trans men. However, daggers like these were carried by everyone from common workers, archers, and gentry. Many well-preserved examples were even recorded from the famous shipwreck of the Mary Rose, King Henry VIII's warship. Some will remember it as history's rudest dagger, which is potentially understandable given the provocative silhouette of a man wearing one sticking straight out in front of his belt. At first glance and impression, it might even be jarring if you don't know what you're looking at. The design of the bollock dagger was also a direct influence on later developments of the Scottish dirk, a 11 to 13 inch long dagger that was carried by Highland warrior men in the 17th century. The exact etymology of the word dirk is unclear. It was either spelled as dirk or dork, and it may have come from the Dutch dolk or German dolch.
I personally think it's dork.
Some Scotsmen even swore oaths on the steel of their dirks as a showing of sincerity and integrity. It was considered to be staking one's own manhood on a promise kept.
That way, if you lie, guess what they could get to do? Not really, but wouldn't it be interesting?
Yeah, that didn't historically happen. Although, keep in mind that men like William Wallace were emasculated before they were executed.
Wait. So the dirk evolved from a dagger based on the male part? Is that where we get the slang, calling a guy a dick or a person a dick nowadays when they're just being a jerk?
Surprisingly, no. I was thinking that at first as well, but what I found instead was that during the Middle Ages, rhyming nicknames became really popular in England. That's how you really get Dick from Richard. Richard becomes Rick, rhymes with Dick. Richard was also such a common name during those times that the diminutive Dick eventually grew to mean any random man. See also Tom, Dick, and Harry. By the 17th century, though, Dick had become a slang term for a male sexual partner and was even referenced in a satirical poem by Richard Head.
Stop it! No! You made up that name!
I wish I had! No, I'm serious. Richard Head wrote a poem called The English Rogue in 1665 about a person who was having trouble conceiving a child, so they bring in a dick, which means another random man. Ironically, though, the word dork was also used to refer to daggers that were actually inspired by male genitalia, and in the 1960s, Americans reinvented the word dork as an alternative slang term for the groinal region, and an alternative term for dick as well. So, etymology, while fun and interesting, often has a really weird way of circling back on itself. Thank you everyone for your continued support, and I look forward to giving you even more in the future. Our community keeps expanding with authentic viewers and subscribers that tune in every week excited for the next installment. Whether that's listening to my world-building rants or tuning in for a full episode, you're the ones that keep this channel afloat against an unforgiving algorithm that keeps trying to douse the flame. That's the meaning of many a mickle max a muckle. Many smaller things making a big thing. And now, a shout out to our patrons and channel members.
Plebe 64 Potato,
Mr. Lobo King 8778,
P64P,
Regios 001,
Jack Plays K Plays,
Maria Elsa 6363,
Moose Now,
El Dragon Biano 3742,
Jack McLeod,
Persephoroth,
Josh is Mary,
Runaway Train 2502,
EA Shadow Gamer,
Sigma LaFlare,
Crochet Whimsy 413,
Anubian the 1335,
Angels Art and Gaming,
Aisha Kashif,
Pluve 81,
Aegis Knight,
7-Star Sanctuary,
and Chained Furry,
T. Mitchell Carr,
MB Durg Wraith,
Emily Masternardi,
Heinrich 28,
Shadow Fox,
Arya Gamari,
Charles Tam,
Jace Moreland,
Pammy Poo,
and Lunder Lumen.